This is going to be part 3 of my series on learning 5-string violin. I want to cover some different techniques you might want to learn depending on what genre you're playing in. I want to talk about your bow distribution and how the length of your notes or your string crossings are going to require you to make different type of technique work in order to play within your genre. To start off about bow distribution, people tell you that the basics of your contact point and your bow distribution are that near the bridge, the string is very bright. It's going to sound very loud and brightly when you start your note from the bridge. And it's going to be, by comparison, lighter and easier to control because there's less weight around the tip, right? If you think about it physically and the geometry of it, when you have your bow like this, the whole weight of the bow is trying to fall. And it will fall into the string. Whereas here, what is falling from this point? Only a very small amount of weight is falling down into the string when it's at the tip. So people also say that close to the bridge obviously is louder, and further up you're going to get a softer tone. So say that the brightest, most articulate phrases you could play, doesn't mean you're going to play this all the time, but the brightest notes you're going to be making are ones right at the bridge and right at the frog. So, for example, you might play the chop and you might play riffs in that style. And then when you want to play a fine and softer passage, you might move your contact point this way and you might play up here. I say that I don't play in a classical style, but I do find, the classical scales and chords and stuff like that are very good to learn for your structure. And to know these pieces of technique are going to help you adapt, the basic physics of the instrument to any genre. So say you're playing in, a reggae band and you just want to play chords and sort of, a little bit funkier with it. That work is going to be at the bridge because you get a very nice, easy sharpness to your notes. Though maybe you want to play quieter just because of the room you're in or because of the electronics in the setup. So you might try to do that same thing up at the top of the bow. Let's compare that. So what's the difference? Why is it softer near the top of the bow? It's because of the weight. There's less weight and less volume is going to be produced at the very start of your note. So when you have less weight on your notes because you're playing up here or because you're playing closer to the neck, everything is softer, and maybe you want a softer sound, so maybe that's a good idea depending on how you're playing. Say that you were playing very lyrically, or you're trying to play a very smooth melody line by comparison for, some other genre. See how I'm kind of moving my bow distribution, that's the word for this. I'm trying to move it between when I want quiet and soft or finer phrases, smaller notes and finer notes. See how it's finer at the tip, but when the further down that I start the note, the louder it's generally going to be, just because the weight of the bow is going into the string as it descends there. So you see that it's brighter and it's fuller over here, and it's softer over here. The onset of the note is also quicker down here, and it's a little bit slower to attack the note. It's a slower attack, you know, the beginning of your note. So for different genres or different styles, whether you're playing electrically or acoustically, you know, those things are going to depend on your stylistic choices and the technique that you're able to play. I wanted to cover, you know, your shifts and your basic chords and stuff a little bit, and how does your bow distribution affect those things? It affects your peace of mind, you know, and it affects the comfort at which you're making your string transitions. Making a string transition with all of the weight above you puts more weight onto your hand. Your frame needs to be able to support a nice and precise motion while still carrying the full weight of the bow up here if you're playing by the bridge. Whereas by comparison, if you're playing down here, up here by the up part of the bow, you don't need as much strength in your bowing hand initially. Say that you're just learning, or say that you're working in a quieter environment, or you're working with an electric instrument that allows you to play quietly because it's being amplified. That means that you might have more clarity and a lot more control of your notes early on if you decide to try to play like this for a while. See how each time I move closer to the frog, closer to over here, it gets louder. There's more weight falling, literally, just from gravity, just more weight falling into the strings and sounding. I wanted to say something. What was it exactly? Something about the weight of the frog here. It was the fingers. It was the pinky finger versus the index finger. You know, some exercises that you'll see will tell you to do this, to try to isolate parts of your hand. Say, oh, take your index finger and still try to move the bow. That's difficult, because a lot of the actual strength in your hand gets applied into the index finger. And, you know, you want to keep your pinky curved, they say. And some people, you know, they take their pinky right off and they play with a stronger grip here. And I don't personally play that way. I like to play with all the fingers on there. And if anything, I practice myself on removing this one because it means it's strengthening the coordination and the strength literally in the back of your hand. Sort of, there's some strength that needs to build to move those fingers correctly. And what that's going to do is basically, if you think of the whole arc of your bow motion somewhat like a parabola, or like, what's the word for it? Like a figure eight of some kind, you know. The weight gets heavier when it's here, and so that weight needs to be balanced by a very strong and coordinated pinky finger. So it means that you have to think up exercises for yourself on how to strengthen your pinky. And some people just sit and do this. You can sit and do this for 20 minutes while you're watching another video. You're just doing nothing, no brain, you're relaxing, but working on your pinky. You can remove the index and just do this for a few minutes, or for 10 minutes. You can do that for as long as you feel comfortable doing it, and it will build your coordination and strength on that side of your hand. What that's going to do technically for your playing is it's going to allow you to smooth out that part of the figure eight. Because say that when you're at the end or at the the top or the bottom, sorry, of your whole bow stroke, there's a finesse that you have to learn to not create other noises on the strings. Because if say you know, between crossing your strings and changing directions and trying to manage all of your dynamics as you play, you really need to work on that pinky, the strength and coordination of the pinky. In my experience anyway, in my approach to things and my particular instrument and everything, I really do try to focus on the strength and coordination of my pinky finger. That helps me play, whether it's slowly, loudly, you know, chords or single melody lines. I'm kind of reinforcing and guaranteeing a certain smoothness by using the pinky finger. And I think for me and my approach, that has proved to be very crucial. So if I could recommend some exercises for that, I would just say, you know, you can do this silently, and you can also just practice at the extremes of your bow and see how different it feels. See how it affects maybe your shoulder coordination and your breathing, the volume and the smoothness and the note transitions, as well as the string transitions, because obviously the coordination needs to pass across from one string to another. One thing I will mention about the 5-string violin is that the radius or the spread between the strings is a little bit more extreme than normal, and that's the biggest thing that I find is different about a 5-string. So when you're crossing all the way from your low string all the way to your top string, this is in +1 scordatura. I mentioned that in the previous video, but just again for your information while you're listening, it's +1 semitone. Sorry, from your low string to your high string, you want smoothness in your tone, you want control in your tone, and to know the overall figure eights and to get very comfortable with playing at the extremes is very crucial to the consistency of your tone. Anyway, I want to call it there. I'm going to say that that's going to be part 3, okay? I'm going to continue these videos. I hope that you guys are enjoying them. And if you want to know anything specific you want me to cover, you can always contact me. Thank you, and I'll see you in part 4. Have a good day.